My name is Matt Striker. His name is Joe Pisapia, and this is the place. Season-long fantasy football managers, I don't care what your record is, we've got you covered. Playing DFS, we have an entire segment dedicated to that. Straight up wagering, you're trying to pad some of your monthly bills, everything off of the tip of our tongues will speak to this. And speaking of that, we have Joe Pisapia, the author of the Fantasy Black Book, the guy that literally wrote the book here. So with that said, at SportsGrid and at SportsGrid TV, that's our social media handles. Just make sure you're following along because everything we talk about here today, Joe, this again, every time we come on the air, it's the most important show that we've ever done, but it really feels that way today.
Well, look, it's week 10, right? So if you made it this far and your teams are still in it, good job. You've probably been with us all season. And this is, we're past the halfway point in the season also. When you start to look at the NFL, you see the NFL looks a lot like some fantasy leagues. You've got a couple teams that are dominant. You've got some teams that are complete messes and disasters because of injuries, the Saints. And then you've got teams that also are right in the middle, still kind of alive and fighting. And I think this is basically that war of attrition. This is that time where if you're going to throw in the towel in your fantasy league, well, bet on you. You are still very much alive. If you are one game over or under 500, you're right in the thick of things. You can come really close to sneaking in that back door of the playoffs and then making a run for a championship. And that's what we're going to try to do here with a lot of these leagues. So week 10 also, saw us go through not only an incredible Thursday night football game, which once again went to the over between those two teams, between the Ravens and the Bengals, another incredible performance. Hopefully none of you are playing against Jamar Chase this week. Also, that would be a bad time potentially already with his 55 points. But we're also past the trade deadline in the NFL too. So all the moves have been made, a couple of defensive moves too. You saw the Lions pick up Zadarius Smith for the pass rush. That's very helpful too. You saw the Steelers pick up some defensive help. That also helps the TJ Watt Defensive Player of the Year asset that we've been talking about. The rest of the moves, we warned everybody. Most of the big names had already been moved on, whether it was Devontae Adams or Amari Cooper or some of the other wide receivers, DeAndre Hopkins, have already been moved on. There wasn't a lot left to do. So we saw a couple minimal things here and there, but nothing really that moves the fantasy meter like Mike Williams, Khalil Herbert. These aren't really guys that I think we're chasing right now. But the trade deadline is gone. Your league trade deadline is still ahead. We've got some trades to make, but also we've got a return. That's really the story of week 10, isn't it, Matt Striker? Let's talk about Christian McCaffrey because this is the thing. Is Jordan Mason now relegated to a bench spot? Is Christian McCaffrey now going to take over a full workload? What are your expectations for this first game back? And it is week 10 for Christian McCaffrey returning to the San Francisco 49ers, who find themselves not at the top of their division, but looking up instead at the Cardinals of all teams.
Well, I do recall earlier in the season when I believe it was you that said, once you get McCaffrey back, all you're going to care about is what you have moving forward. So if you're a McCaffrey manager right now, he can't come at a better time. It doesn't matter because you want to plug him in there and you want to see what happens. With regards to the team and the real world of it, yeah, they're looking up at a team like Arizona, but their identity walks back into that locker room. When their identity walks back into that locker room, everyone else kind of sits up. The chests puff out. You and I have been in competitive places, right? When your boy, your guy, your best player walks back in, it's like, all right, guys, this can still be done. So looking at that from a wagering perspective, I expect them to be in a bunch of dogfights. But from a fantasy perspective, the show is called FST. CMC managers are excited to have him back because they want that production that they have not had. Joe?
Yeah, they do. It's a good matchup, too, against Tampa Bay, who's given up a ton of receiving yards and passing yards this year to opposing offenses, which is good news for Brock Purdy. Good news for this team coming off a bye, too. The 49ers could not have asked for a better time with that bye. They've had so many injuries going on. They've lost Ayuk for the year. Jennings was hurt. Debo was not doing well. This was a team that's kind of just been really feeling it. Now here's the thing. We looked at the health last year and the strength of schedule and everything take its toll on the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that also lost the Super Bowl last year. So this will be really telling and really interesting. If the 49ers don't come out today and handle their business, it's going to be a difficult situation because this is a very winnable game because Tampa Bay is not at its full strength. No Chris Godwin, no Mike Evans, right? This is a team that has also kind of left it all out on the field, especially last week against Kansas City. And they've come up short because of the injuries. And that's really been the theme of this season. So Christian McCaffrey does return. You can't imagine a full workload. And you have to understand, too, there is absolutely injury risk still there. a re-injury here. I've talked to Deepak Jonah, who is one of our sports doctors over on Fantasy Pros, and he said, look, you got to be really careful with this guy in terms of the workload, in terms of the practice load, in terms of the management of this player too, because these kind of injuries that he's dealing with, they are very easy to re-aggravate upon bringing that workload back. So we'll see. Hopefully good news for fantasy managers and Christian McCaffrey alike. Also good news potentially, at least for the Houston Texans, because Nico Collins looks like he is a game time decision today. He was activated from the IR. He's missed a few weeks with a hamstring issue. He only played 5 games, but he was a top 5 wide receiver over that period. 3 touchdowns, 567 receiving yards. He saw 45 targets. And let's be honest, Matt, since he's gotten hurt, this Houston Texans offense has struggled. Joe Mixon's done the best he can. I understand losing Stephon Diggs did not help the situation. But without Nico Collins, who is their alpha dog, who is their number one go-to guy, they've struggled. And they need him desperately in this game today against the Detroit Lions, an offense that simply does not quit. So game time decision for Nico Collins. Let's say he plays. Do you feel confident putting him in that lineup? You've waited for a month. Is it time to just throw him in there and see what you get?
So you're speaking to a Nico Collins manager, and I've been all over the waiver wire with this anticipation, and I've arrived at some nice alternatives. I don't know if they'll be available in most of your leagues, but it's guys like Shakir and Coleman and things like that. But I'm nervous. So if I really need the points, I don't know what I'm going to get. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't. I would sit him. But if it's one of these things where it's like, yeah, I don't care. I'm playing with the house money, so on and so forth. And yeah, of course, I want him back out there because I want my team to be complete. From a real world perspective, I think the Texans really need to understand that if they get their doors blown off here today with Collins on the field, they have some serious reevaluation to do heading into the rest of the year. If they get their doors blown off without Collins on the field, at least they have that kind of back pocket feeling, Joe.
Yeah,
which I know you enjoy.
A lot of Drake London, good news. He looks like he's going to play with that hip injury. People were worried about that. That's turning in the right direction. Not good news for the Cowboys. Obviously, Dak Prescott's going to miss significant time. CeeDee Lamb is going to play today, but Cooper Rush is that new quarterback in a season that really just seems like a complete loss for the Dallas Cowboys. From a fantasy perspective, the downgrade from, Dak Prescott to Cooper Rush is significant. So you're going to have to live with that the rest of the season. So we can look at CeeDee Lamb as maybe potentially a bust here as the number 1 or 2 or 3 overall pick. I know on our board we had Chase, up there, and he's finally in the last couple of weeks started to realize after a slow start his fantasy value as a true number 1 guy. McCaffrey hasn't played a lick of football all year, so the top of the board, even when Tyreek Hill has not been great this year. And it's funny because when the injury happened to J.J. McCarthy, the Justin Jefferson stock took a huge hit. People were getting huge values on him, and he's been pretty darn good. He's got a great matchup today. Also, this week, the Saints decided enough was enough when it came to Dennis Allen. They have fired their head coach after starting the season with 2 wins. Dennis Allen is out, but also out Chris Olave with the concussion issues. Now you have a real skeleton crew with the Saints. You might see more Taysom Hill today. You're going to see Derek Carr, continue to hand the ball off a ton to Alvin Kamara. Probably a lot of big overs on him. But the Saints right now, another team that started off really well, absolute disaster ever since, Matt. And now they're back in the pool for a head coach next year.
Yeah, listen, from a right here, right now kind of perspective, when you mention Taysom Hill, I know a lot of people kind of roll their eyes, but my ears perk up, and I want to bring forward a conversation we were having before the show came on the air, and I asked the question is, if you have Taysom Hill slotted at the tight end and he does things as a quarterback, what happens? And Joe said those quarterback points count. So it's definitely something you might want to start to look at. I don't know, and if it flips the other way as well, it's just intriguing. It's a good way to try to find some points, Joe.
Look, if you're really hurting a quarterback, maybe if he qualifies a quarterback in a Superflex league and you're kind of in a bad spot here, you lost Trevor Lawrence or you lost some other guys, maybe you plug Taysom Hill in there at the QB spot. But we've got the booms for week 10. Don't worry, some guys are going to go off. We'll tell you who right after this.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So, look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions. Once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia with you here, giving you everything you need in order to dominate ahead of this week's NFL action. It is now time for the Fantasy Booms. Let's take a look at what we have here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 if we have time. Some good stuff, Joe, so let's dive in. What do you have?
Yeah, I'm going to start with Brock Purdy coming off a bye. This is a really good matchup against Tampa Bay. Like I said, we've seen Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, a lot of QBs carve up this secondary this season. And I think with Brock Purdy, what you're also going to have today is that return of Christian McCaffrey not only open up things in that offense quite a bit, but you're also going to benefit a great deal statistically from the yards after catch of Christian McCaffrey. So those little dump offs that are 2-yard passes end up becoming 25-yard gains sometimes. And that really pads the stats of a guy like Brock Purdy. The DFS world is a good situation here for him. I like the overs on Purdy today. We'll get to that in an hour or two. The last game he had here against the Dallas Cowboys, he finished as QB4. In fact, he finished as a top 10 QB in 3 of his last 3 games. So that is a trend going in the right direction for him. And Christian McCaffrey can only help that scenario. Again, he helps pad the stats. It's a really good matchup. You've also got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming off a short week. So everything you could possibly want to be in the right frame of mind here, in the right situation for Brock Purdy to be successful, it is. I mean, it's on the road. That's the only thing you could say about it. But again, it's a road game after a bye, so I'm not too worried about that. So Brock Purdy is in a smash situation today, and he should probably carve up this secondary of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who just all year have not been good.
All right, speaking of the road, let's keep it on the road for the New York Jets. A lot of people are reinvigorated, if you will, in their desire for the Jets, especially from the wagering market. Let's look at a running back on the road at Arizona. Who do you have?
Look, I think I understand last time we saw the Jets, right? Everybody was, kind of looking forward to, this Houston game and seeing like, okay, maybe the Jets can get a victory and get back on track. And I think we're overvaluing what we saw just a little bit. Aaron Rodgers in the first half of that game was absolutely abysmal. The crowd was chanting to sell the team. Took Garrett Wilson making the catch of the year and a couple threading of the needle passes that could have easily been interceptions that Devontae Adams ended up catching through the fingers basically of a defender. And all of a sudden now the Jets are back. Like, I'm just pumping the brakes here a little bit on this. I think this is going to be a competitive game against the Arizona Cardinals, who find themselves as kind of a weird, plucky underdog, I think, from the media perspective in this game. So I think what you do is you go back to Breece Hall. And you've seen since the pivot here, basically, a lot more Breece Hall, which is what you wanted to see. You go through the game in Buffalo in week 6, right? So after they fire the coach, 113 yards rushing. Then he had that down game against Pittsburgh, but that's okay. Pittsburgh really good against the run. We'll give him a pass. Then 80 yards rushing, 74 yards rushing against Houston. He's also working a ton in the passing game. So even though his rushing total was low against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he had 103 receiving yards in that game. So Breece Hall is the focal point of this offense. Don't lose sight of that. This is a really good situation for him. And when you're going on the road, especially with that extra rest, which he has, because last time we saw them was on Halloween, right? You had that extra time. I think you're going to see a fresh Breece Hall, and I think you're going to see a lot of him today. So it's a good situation for Breece, good situation for the New York Jets to capitalize on that unexpected victory where they caught the Houston Texans without Stephon Diggs, without Nico Collins on the road in a short week, right, in their own building. That was a good situation for the Jets, and they did come up with a victory, even though it was a late blooming one. So I don't want to overrate that too much. Let's get back to basics. Let's think more Breece Hall than necessarily all of a sudden the Jets passing game has returned in spades.
I don't know. We all know how much Aaron Rodgers loves a good desert. All right, let's go to Justin Jefferson at Jacksonville. Pretty certain Jacksonville will not have their quarterback. But let's talk about Justin Jefferson and what he can do on the road at Jacksonville.
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of games where we've been talking about like paying up in DFS for Justin Jefferson, but I think this is going to be one where it might be too good to be true. He hasn't had a touchdown in his last 2 games, so you could say he's a little due. The Jacksonville secondary, again, not a good one. A great situation here for Sam Darnold, bouncing back to last week against that Indianapolis team after a tough loss against the Rams. So it's really, things I think are moving in a good direction here. When you have the injury on the other side of Trevor Lawrence, you have potential for that offense to be ineffective, which means you're giving the Minnesota Vikings more chances to score and possibly shorter fields to score and really good situations. So I love Aaron Jones this week. I also love Justin Jefferson this week too. So the Vikings are in a really good smash spot here against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are right there with the Detroit Lions. So despite the fact they've dropped a couple games, they are right in the thick of it still. So look, you don't need me to tell you Justin Jefferson's good. Of course, he's starting in all of your lineups. That's not the point. The point is, if you're looking for overs, which are already high numbers, you're looking for touchdown props that are already juiced a little bit, you're looking to spend up in DFS, some weeks it's hard when it comes to Justin Jefferson stats. I don't think this is the tough one. I think you see a huge game from Justin Jefferson against the Jags, and you're very grateful that he slipped to you in some of those drafts, as we talked about earlier too, right? Some of those top 5 overall picks have struggled this year, to say the least. The Lambs, the Hills, the Christian McCaffreys of the world, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase seem like those outliers. Then you got a guy like, Derrick Henry, who's performed like a number 1 guy, but you got him in the late second, early third round. So incredible, value there. But Jefferson, great spot against the Jags. I think he blows up this week.
All right, I like it. We started this whole entire segment of fantasy booms at Tampa. Let's return at Tampa with the time that we have left. Really dive into what happens here when a player returns, a team like the 49ers, the player being Christian McCaffrey, how it affects everyone. We talked about the quarterback position. Let's talk about the tight end position now. Let's talk about George Kittle.
Yeah, Kittle should be healthy this week. He's in a good situation on that because he's coming off the bye, and Kittle and health sometimes don't always go together. But when you saw Tampa Bay specifically last time, you saw they gave up 14 catches to Travis Kelce. And this is not prime Travis Kelce. So this is a really good situation for Kittle. And the fact that you're getting Christian McCaffrey back really opens up that offense, right? As a defense, you're trying to wonder, where am I going with this, with the defense? Where am I trying to stop? Am I trying to stop Christian McCaffrey? Am I trying to stop Deebo Samuel? What am I trying to do here? And then George Kittle, next thing you know, has a 3-touchdown game. Like, that could certainly be on the docket today. If you look over Fantasy Pros, he's the number 1 ranked tight end for the week. So a great situation here for George Kittle. Again, Purdy Kittle as a stack, or Purdy Kittle as an investment today in the wagering market and overs, I think is a really good one. And some touchdown equity comes with George Kittle today against this Tampa Bay defense that struggles in the secondary, struggles at a linebacking core, just struggles to defend anybody, and they're coming off a short week. When we return, I'll look at the downside players of Week 10. Not everyone's going to have the best week ever. We'll tell you who's in store for bad news when we return.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So, look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orgy as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Right before we came back on the air, we were actually talking about the SportsGrid holiday party. Oh my gosh, can you believe it? People are actually starting to talk about holiday parties, and our producer, Cool Hand Luke's like, hey, you guys going? And I'm like, yeah, man, of course I'm going. And Joe's like, I'm not going to that. I'm not hang out with all these people.
Yeah.
Anyways, he's like, that party's a bust. That's what he said. He said, that's how you should introduce this next segment, because we just did fantasy booms. So now we do fantasy busts. But Joe, I love the party. I love everyone here at SportsGrid.
Yeah.
And that party's a fantastic party.
He loves the nightlife. He loves to boogie. He's Matt Striker. Matt Striker you can't get him out of his own cul-de-sac. No matter how hard we try to get him to these parties, to get him at social events, you can't do it. Matt refuses to leave his house. And I get it. He's got cute little kids and he has fun playing Legos and all that stuff. It's great. But I mean, once in a while you get out, do some adult things, have some appetizers, right? The little cocktail. I know you're a big drinker guy, but still you can hang out with me, you and I, a little conversation on the rooftop bar. It seems like a lovely thing. And it's free. Free stuff. Come on, Matt Striker. Every American loves free stuff. All right. Well, they're not going to love this week. These are players you're not going to love at all. Tua Tagovailoa, let's start with him here against the Rams. The Rams defense is playing a little bit better in that secondary in terms of being a little bit more ball hawkish. You saw some interceptions last week that they were able to convert. That was a huge thing. Tua has played better than some of the rankings will suggest, but I'm also a little concerned about Tyreek Hill. When Mike McDaniel says, we'll see, when it comes to the health of him playing, we'll see doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy. I don't know about all of you. And it just something feels like, well, I think we see this in the NFL sometimes. You see it on every level, right? When a team continues to lose, eventually it's hard to get out of that tailspin. Turning things around is a very difficult chore, especially at this level of the NFL, especially at this juncture in the season. You recognize it's week 10. You recognize you're in that second half of the season. And I think you also recognize that it's going to be really tough for you looking at this roster and looking at the way the defense has played this year to think that there's enough time left for us to be relevant again. Now, from a fantasy perspective, he's still ranked as a QB1. He is a QB12 this week, but I'll be honest with you, looking behind him, I'd rather start Jared Goff. I'd rather start Kyler Murray this week, despite the fact that Jets defense is very good. I think I'd still take my chances with the rushing equity. I would not be shocked if Justin Herbert outperformed Tua Tagovailoa this week. He's looked really healthy for the first time these last couple weeks recently, coming out of their bye. So I think you've got other options here potentially in those single quarterback leagues. In Superflex, you're tied to Tua. This is what it is at this point, especially with some of the teams on bye. And we're heading towards those deeper bye weeks in week 12 and week 14. So, the Mac Jones, Cooper Rush, guys like that, they're not going to really take care of you in those leagues. So you just kind of close your eyes and hope that Tua can get you some fantasy points. And look, maybe this is a potential for Jalen Waddle to have a bigger day He's had a relatively quiet season, but I just don't love the matchup here. And the Rams, as we're going to investigate later on, look like a team that is starting to pick things up here. When you have Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp get healthy and you have the defense start to play a little better and a little bit of confidence, that's how you pull yourself out of a losing streak. And I think that's where the Dolphins have struggled this year. And a team like the Rams, I think these are two teams going in opposite directions right now.
Yep. Well done by you, Joe. I've always said that I think you are a great coach, right? You coach your daughter's flag football team, but I think you're just a great coach overall. Actually, let's run with that. Let's put you in the Denver Bronco running back room as a coach. You have Kansas City today. Give me a player you're talking to. What are you telling them?
Look, Javonte Williams is in a tough spot here. This is a really good defense. So I'm talking to my quarterback here and saying, look, you can't run the ball against the Chiefs. So we got to do is maybe you can throw the ball to Javonte Williams, get him in space a little bit. Maybe you got to, utilize some tight ends. Maybe you got to, get Bo Nix out there running a little bit more. But this is a really tough situation. I know last week we were not excited about Javonte Williams against the Ravens rush defense, and we were right. And now I'm not excited this week. And that's why a couple weeks ago we thought he was a sell high, because he was in a spot where the next two matchups were not good ones. And now he's living in it. And then we've heard rumors that Audric Estime might get some more work potentially. So again, the crowded backfield on top of the matchup, just not a good scenario for Javonte Williams in fantasy. If you have a pivot, I would look for it in fantasy this week.
All right, let's talk some tight ends here. It looks like Cole Kmet has your beloved New England Patriots. What's your advice?
Yes. The not play Cole Kmet anymore. It's really frustrating because this was a guy that had a couple big splash games. We thought, okay, here we go. And then the bye happened, and it's been misery ever since for the Bears and misery for Cole Kmet. Since the bye in those last two games, he has one target for one catch for 14 yards. Enough is enough. What are we doing? Taysom Hill, Zach Ertz, freaking Jonnu Smith, even Jake Ferguson with Cooper Rush. I'll play anybody right now over Cole Kmet. You can tell that I had him in a couple leagues, can't you? Feel great. We'll be back after this.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orgy as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker, Joe Pisapia, giving you everything you need in order to dominate. And Joe, I often say during the show, you're the author of the Fantasy Black Book, so on and so forth. Now, before we get into DFS, how's it going? How are the sales of the book? And what's been your feedback? Like when people obviously in the community give you feedback, has it been a lot of, oh my God, thank you, you've changed my life? Or is it, you know what you should do? Like, what's it like for you?
No, it's not a lot of life-changing kind of stuff. But I mean, look, fantasy football is an important part of a lot of people's annual routine. It's, it keeps people together in times of difficulty. It keeps families still doing stuff together. It keeps friends together who no longer work or see each other in the same capacity they used to. So, like, what we do here is important, I think, at the end of the day. And fantasy football is one of those things, and that we all kind of can come together on, which is important and nice. It's nice to have these things because these things are getting harder and harder to find sometimes when you look around. But the good news is there's still plenty of value out there in the DFS market, and certainly some high-priced guys as well. Saquon Barkley at the top of the list for a man who can run forwards and backwards both faster than Matt and myself. Saquon Barkley, 9,600, very expensive. I would fade away from Christian McCaffrey. If I'm going to spend up on a running back, I'd rather have Barkley. You know he's getting that full workload. But when it comes to full workloads, you've got Kareem Hunt sitting right there, who I have to say, I'm going to take the L on Kareem Hunt because I did not think that old man Kareem Hunt had enough left in the tank, but he has. He has been incredibly steady. If you look at the game log and what he's been able to produce too, every week he's out there in PPR leagues. 3 of the last 4 weeks, he's had 20-plus points. I mean, that's incredible when you consider that. Now, this week, a little tougher matchup here. He's going against the 9th-ranked rush defense of the Denver Broncos, but again, because he works in that passing game, he still has a lot of fantasy value. Breece Hall at 8,300, that's more where I want to live this week. I think that is the better play against the Arizona Cardinals. And it's funny, in the Black Book, we talked about this, right, a couple weeks ago. I said, maybe I was wrong about the Cardinals. Maybe they're not the plucky, fun team that I thought they might be. Well, I think I was wrong about being wrong because they're at the top of the standings right now. And you asked me about upsets this week. Why not the Arizona Cardinals at home, underdogs against the Jets? I mean, the Jets find a way to lose games last time I've seen them for the most part. So just saying. Aaron Jones also just tragically under appreciated, 6,700. I mean, this is a guy that absolutely should be rostered in a lot of spots today against the Jacksonville Jaguars. You have to imagine they're going to have a lead. You have to imagine he's got touchdown equity today. So he hasn't hit 100 yards since week 3. This could be one of those matchups where he has it. And look, this is a team, again, that struggles mightily against the pass, which means Sam Darnold, the first half of this game, I imagine is going to air it out. I imagine you're going to get a lot of work then in Aaron Jones in the second half of this game. So keep a close eye on that. It might take a little while, but I think you will get there. But the running back situation, again, you've got a lot of guys on this board, varying prices that you can work with this week.
I love it because everything you say, it spurns thought. And I really wish, I'm a pen and paper kind of generation guy, but a lot of the stuff I just want to kind of write down, get to my device, make my wagers, make my picks. But I like it. Hall and Jones with some salary relief then gives us a wide receiver pool that starts with Justin Jefferson at 9,500. Is this one of those days where you just say, I'm just going to pay up there, or do you pivot somewhere else?
It is. It's one of these days where I want him. And you can make it work. I mean, you can go down a quarterback. We're talking about Drake May. You can look for some wide receiver relief. Guys like Nick Westbrook-Akine, who's been getting a fair amount of work lately. Guys like Taysom Hill, Quentin Johnson. There's definitely some guys out there that you could pivot to and find some relief in the salary. And you're going to have to get Justin Jefferson a lineup. But I just think Justin Jefferson is the right play this week. So he is very expensive. He's 9,500. Garrett Wilson at 7,900. Despite the fact that Devontae Adams is around, Garrett Wilson seems like the guy who's really taken off. So the presence of Adams has really opened up a lot of single coverage for Garrett Wilson, and he's getting peppered with targets, and he's been making the most of it. Spectacular touchdown catch the last time we saw him. George Pickens also getting peppered with targets. He is 7,000 over on FanDuel. He's a good price over on DK too. I think very modestly priced. This is a huge game here. Steelers and Commanders. We're going to really get a sense now where the Commanders are at. This is a temperature check. You're getting a veteran Steeler team coming off of bye with a head coach who knows how to win football games and knows how to prepare. And the fun Jaden Daniels-led Commanders, now they're down a running back, right? They're down Brian Robinson Jr. again, that kind of. So we'll see if they're up for the task. But regardless, Pickens right now, a guy that it looks like they're going to throw a ton of 50-50 balls up there, and hopefully Pickens comes down with them. DeAndre Hopkins finally got going with the Kansas City Chiefs last Monday. We love seeing him catch touchdowns. We still love seeing him get targets. $6K. It's a great value. Let's go back there again. And Rome Odunze seems to be a guy who's starting to emerge here, the rookie for the Chicago Bears. You don't love a lot of what's going on with the Chicago Bears. So what we thought was going to be some target share going to Cole Kmet seems to be pivoting since the bye week to Rome Odunze after that break. So that is a good thing for Odunze, a bad thing for Cole Kmet, and probably a bad thing for Keenan Allen. And DJ Moore's value is not nearly what it was last year, where Justin Fields was just peppering him with targets over and over and over again. We're not seeing that same sort of connectivity with Caleb Williams and DJ Moore that we saw with Justin Fields and DJ Moore. So Rome Odunze, the rookie, starting to play out a little bit. He's one of my favorite trade targets. More on that later.
All right, I love it. I'm doing the news with a pro. All right, let's talk quarterbacks here. Jalen Hurts is at the top, but I would love to start at the bottom and work my way up here because your buddy Drake May is at 6,800. What do you think?
Yeah, my buddy Drake May in a matchup here against the 20th ranked rush defense and also a secondary that's played really poorly. Let's be honest. I mean, that secondary has not played good these last couple games for a myriad of different reasons, but Drake May at 6,800 gives you rushing equity. And that's the one thing you could take away. He has been certainly better than Jacoby Brissett. I think people were very concerned about throwing him into the Lions' den a little too soon, but Drake May has responded. He's been pretty good. He's made the most out of some lackluster weapons around him. But I think if you're looking for a cheap out, again, how do we get up there to Justin Jefferson this week? I think Drake May might be one of those ways. Now, if you want to just go ahead and stack Darnold and Jefferson together, that's fine too. You're going to have to pay down at running back, pay down at tight end, some other wide receiver spots in order to make that all work. You see Jalen Hurts on the opposite end here, 9,400. Again, he's dealing with a couple injuries, but his touchdown equity's been through the roof this year. Josh Allen at 9,200. Purdy's kind of that mid-level value. I talked about the matchup here against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I like a stack here of 49ers, specifically Purdy and Kittle. That I think is the most cost-effective that you can have. So that's the approach I'd be taking. And of course, Patrick Mahomes underpriced at 7,900. Now that Hopkins is there, you might see this team start to roll a little bit in terms of offense. You see Kelsey starting to play better. This defense is very good. At the end of the day, there's one undefeated team, and it's the Kansas City Chiefs. And I know nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to hear me talk about three-peats and all this stuff. People, it's so funny. Same thing happened to Tom Brady. You're the lovable, plucky underdog. You're the fresh new kid in town. Everybody loves you, right? It's like that Eagles song, New Kid in Town, one of Matt's favorites. And then all of a sudden you win a bunch and now everybody hates you. Well, sorry. I'm not going to get there. Kansas City Chiefs, great football team, well coached, good players. And again, they're starting to look like the team to beat once again in the AFC.
Yeah, no, sound advice. And if everyone wants to live away from that, then go right ahead. But I'm going to stay with sound advice because sound advice always pays the bills. Let's stretch our legs with the time that we have left and talk tight ends here. Some familiar names up at the top, but there could be some gems. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah, look, Travis Kelce coming off a huge game. He's certainly in play, but again, expensive, so you can't have Jefferson too. Cade Otton, been a target monster since you've gotten Chris Godwin out. He's been on the field a ton all season, and now because he's on the field, he's seeing a ton of targets. Cade Otton probably is a top 5 or 6 tight end rest of season. If this volume continues, maybe even could push further up that chart. He's a really interesting buy low, too, for a team that might have picked him up and doesn't need a second tight end. Evan Ingram at 6,200. Again, I'm going to pass on that because of the quarterback situation. Kyle Pitts, again, another tough one. But then Hunter Henry at 5,300. In play a bit today, I think, with Drake May, if you want to take that easy stack. Kittle is the guy to pay up for, though, if you're going to pay up for a tight end this week. And then on top of that, too, if you want to pivot all the way down, don't forget about Taysom Hill. New Orleans does not have a lot of pieces left to run this offense. He's going to touch the football, whether it be under center, whether it be at the tight end position, whether it be at running back, H-back. Who knows what we're going to see from Taysom Hill, but my guess is he gets some work. When we return, let's talk trade on FST.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So, look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orgy as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here. And of course, stay tuned. There's so much great programming here on this network. And I got to tell you, I really feel, and I want to ask our producers, every show during the breaks on a Sunday before kickoff is everyone just on their phones making wagers, setting lineups. Like, it just really feels like the entire production room, everyone behind the glass, you, me, we're all just like, what do you think about this guy, Aaron Jones? Like, oh. But that shows that we love it. And I think that's fantastic. Let's continue to spread the love with buy low, sell high. This has been fantastic week over week. Joe, you've really been hitting a lot of these. Let's start with a couple of buy lows and we'll end with a couple of sell highs, man. Who do you like, sir, first for the buy low?
Well, dude, I mean, let's go Tyrone Tracy. Look, the Giants and Panthers, look, we're sending the NFL product to Europe, right? We're sending it out there to United Kingdom. We're sending it out there to Germany. I mean, do we really have to make them suffer through this game today? Like, this is the Giants and the Panthers. Is this the best we could do? Come on, man. But Tyrone Tracy, at least, I think, is in a good spot here. The Carolina Panthers are terrible. You've also got the bye coming up. So this is why he's an interesting buy, because he's not going to be available next week. And I think if you're looking towards this stretch run here, when he comes back from the bye, he gets Tampa, a Dallas team that is beside itself right now, the New Orleans Saints, and then in the playoffs, tough first matchup against Baltimore, but then Atlanta and the Indy in the next two. So Tyrone Tracy, I think, is the better running back in this backfield. We've said that before. And I do think as the season goes on here, you're going to see more of an evaluation period on him, which means him getting to work a little bit more to see, okay, what are we moving forward with next year? What are those pieces? So Tracy right now, if you could get him this morning before that game, you don't have a lot of time left, but that would be an interesting trade target. But I think even next week when he's on that bye, trying to acquire him for this stretch run to the playoffs at least. Again, tough matchup in that first week, but the rest of them pretty good outside of that one against Baltimore. I think Tracy's an asset that you're going to want to have. And I think that going forward, he is the guy that's going to work a little bit more. He's coming off a game against Washington, 16 carries for 66 yards. But the game before that against Pittsburgh, a very tough run defense, 20 carries for 145 and a touchdown. That was a tremendous game by him. And he's had a couple of those splash games too. You go back to that game against Seattle, 18 for 129. So Tyrone Tracy is a guy that can have some of these big blow up games and perform much better than your prototypical RB2. In fact, this week he is ranked as RB14 overall. And I think somewhere between that 14-18 range is where he's going to hover the rest of the season. So he's a really good value if you can pick him up in a deal going forward.
All right. I like it. You know, Joe, oftentimes on this show, we'll hear a name bandied about in the first 4 weeks or so. Something will happen, an injury, something, and you won't hear that name again until right around week 10. Ladd McConkey is that name, is now finally the time.
I think so. And Ladd McConkey was a player that God knows I talked about a ton this offseason, right? And all the draft prep. I thought this would be a player that would be really useful, right? as it stands right now, this was a guy being drafted as a wide receiver 4, sometimes even a 5 in some other shallow leagues. Right now, he has 52 targets, 35 receptions, 440 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That's good enough for the 8 games that he's played to be wide receiver 22 on the season so far. So you've gotten more than you wanted or could have anticipated already out of him. But I think going forward, again, you see on his schedule, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Atlanta, right? Just coming up here after this week. So you've got a lot of good matchups here coming up, and those teams give up a ton of receiving yards. So why not try to acquire Ladd McConkey now? People might say, oh, he's only got 4 touchdowns, or, oh, Quentin Johnson had the big splash game. It's the consistency of McConkey in the PPR that you're looking for. A guy that's going to catch 5-6 balls every single week, a guy that's going to go double digits every week, and if he gets you a touchdown, well, it's going to go even better. But I think now that you've seen Justin Herbert look better than he has in the month of September, at least for sure, when he was coming off that foot injury, everything seems to be settling in a little bit better, I think, for the Chargers. And I keep coming back to it again. Cincinnati, Baltimore, Atlanta, that stretch run, followed by Kansas City. Okay, that's a tough one. But how about then Tampa after that, the first week of the playoffs? You want to get all those Chargers you possibly can for that first week of the playoffs against that Tampa secondary. So a great situation, a great time to buy low on Ladd McConkey, who already has outperformed our expectations. But I think some people, because they drafted him, later in drafts, really don't appreciate how good he's been because they haven't played him as much. Now's an opportunity if you need wide receiver to go out and acquire somebody like Ladd McConkey.
Love your way of thinking, Joe. It inspires me to look at my teams, look at scheduling, and so on and so forth. The ability to look forward, very important. All right, so if we're looking to buy some players, we're going to have to sell some assets here. Let's start here. Give me a player to sell, a wide receiver, if I'm trying to land a player like Ladd McConkey. How would you go the other way? Give me a sell high.
Yeah, I'm going to sell high on Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's had a couple big splash games, but really very little in between. And you anticipate when Seattle comes back from the bye week that DK Metcalf is healthy again. And when he is, that target share kind of disappears a little bit for him. So I know JSN had a big-time pedigree. I liked him as a prospect. I didn't love him like some other people did. I think he's a talented wide receiver. But unfortunately, I think there's only so many targets to go around in this offense. And when DK Metcalf returns, I just don't know if JSN goes back to being that guy that we all looked and said, look, let's start JSN and hope for the best, and then we get nothing. So it's been very boom or bust. I don't like those kind of players down the stretch run. I want a floor of points, and I'm just not sure when DK Metcalf returns if JSN can give us that weekly floor. And the one thing that kills you and it will just absolutely murder you in the playoffs is taking a goose egg or a 5-point performance from a guy like JSN.
Jeez. Okay. So let's say the manager rejects that deal and wants more, wants a bigger name, and you're trying to put together a nice package to roar into the playoffs. Give me a bigger wide receiver, a name that will make a splash. What do you have for a sell high candidate?
Well, I mean, a lot of people might kind of, think this is a strange one, but I think Devontae Adams has lost a step, and I think Devontae Adams might be a guy that you can float out there off of the name brand value of Devontae Adams and off of the last time we saw him, which was so far the best version of him that we've seen with the Jets. I keep going back to the same thing, which is it seems like since he's arrived, that Garrett Wilson is the guy that's really kind of popped off and not Devontae Adams necessarily. So I know Adams is a receiver that people are very comfortable with, people have had in their lineups for years and won championships with, and that's great. So the game against the Texans, really good one. But then I think you're looking, the week before against New England was not good. The week before with the Pittsburgh Steelers, also not good. So I don't know. I think Adams might have more theoretical value than actual value. We're going to talk about a running back when we return to the deep dive. Don't go anywhere. This stat's going to blow your mind.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So, look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here. And folks, at the end of the day, right, we're all just fans, right, no matter what. And I think Joe and I feel it's almost our responsibility to inform and remind everyone on the greatness of players as they pass through, because so much is put in front of us with regards to media, players, information. Sometimes we got to take a step back and be like, oh my gosh, we live in a time where we can see insert player here. And I believe that Derrick Henry is that player. I'm from a time of a Walter Payton and a Barry Sanders and an Emmitt Smith. Maybe I'm spoiled, but to me, Derrick Henry is special, Joe. And a week before last, you brought forward a great stat. And now, as I understand, you have another stat with some great names that solidifies Derrick Henry's just awesomeness. What do you have?
Yeah, I think the word we're looking for is legendary when it comes to some of the names on this list here, too. And we talked about going into the season, my favorite prop was the over on the 925.5 rushing yards on the season for Derrick Henry to lead the league in rushing as well. So that already cashed in week 9. Like we already got that number in week 9. Unbelievable. It's a beautiful thing. And it's something that, you know, when you look at the running back position, you just don't see workhorses like Derrick Henry anymore. And I understand, he was 30, and I understand it's a new team, and there's some traps there historically, but legendary players go past that. So This is a stat here I saw about Derrick Henry and where he's at in terms of legendary status. The most games with 100-plus rushing yards and multiple rushing touchdowns in NFL history. Jim Brown and LaDainian Tomlinson have the most at 25 apiece. Number 2 on this list, or the second place guy standing alone there, is Derrick Henry at 21, along with Emmitt Smith. So there you have it. That's a pretty good group of company, and Derrick Henry's got the ability to have a couple more of these this year if he wants. I mean, he could end up this year going past all those guys, which would be just stunning. And looking at the tail of the tape, too, for running back. So Derrick Henry has leading the league right now, 1,120 rushing yards. Saquon Barkley is number 2 at 925. He is leading the league in attempts at 184. Number 2 is Kyron Williams at 161. If you look at the touchdown numbers, he is at 12 rushing touchdowns. The next highest is Kyron Williams at 8, tied with Jalen Hurts at 8 too. So just for perspective there, in terms of 20-plus yard runs, guess who's at the top? Derrick Henry. He is dominating right now. It's why he is at the top of the board for AP Player of the Year. And it makes a lot of sense. So Jamar Chase is still a really interesting wager. And if he keeps having some of these splash games like he's been having, Jamar Chase might start to really get some helium in the second half for this award. But make no mistake about it here. However Jamar Chase finishes the season or doesn't finish the season well, Derrick Henry's first half has been outstanding. It's the reason why the Ravens are where they are. And if the Ravens are going to be a team that looks into the future, they got to keep the ball with Derrick Henry as much as possible. Lamar's made some great plays. This defense is a problem, and you're going to have to grind some clock. You're going to have to continue to play a pace sometimes, of game, because the defense continues to get exposed time and time again to Baltimore Ravens. That my big takeaway is not, oh, what an incredible, victory once again that the Ravens had there. What a great offense and Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. My takeaway is, oh my goodness, this defense can't stop anybody, especially late in games. And this is a problem if the Baltimore Ravens want to win a Super Bowl, which is why I keep going back to the Chiefs. So, Matt, I mean, we're past the halfway point. Going into the season, I told you my wager was Lions and Chiefs.
Yep.
I'm sticking to that. I'm not sure where you are. Do you see that being the Super Bowl? Do you see someone else sneaking in there? What's the perspective for you when you're looking at the teams that you think are going to be there at the end from what you've seen the first 9 weeks of the season?
The dogfight, the path for the Chiefs is going to be tough because of the Ravens, because of the Bills. And to me, that's what makes it exciting. Everyone wants to see the Chiefs, the top guy, taken out. They want to see a new representative on one side. For me, not a foregone conclusion, but yeah, I do like the Lions as the favorite in the NFC on the other side. But it's going to be a team like the Ravens, the Bills, that the Chiefs are going to have to endure. Now, let's put a pin in that. I just want to bring it full circle back to the reason we had this segment. It's just how great Derrick Henry is. There's also something else just for people in general. There's an alphaness, and not in a negative way. There's I want to be the best. I want to win. I want the ball at all times. You've heard all great coaches say that all the greats want the play at the time to be about them. I think that's something to take away. More and more people should have that attitude towards life. Try to want the moment, step into the spotlight, be the alpha of the moment like Derrick Henry. Joe?
Yeah, and he has been. He's been that and more. I mean, it's a great move for them. They've got to figure out this defense, though, because as great as Henry has been, I don't think it's enough to get them past the Chiefs, the way the defense of the Chiefs is played. We come back, hour 2 of FST, the start, sit, and a whole lot more. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Are they definitely done with Daniel Jones from this point? And any shot that Dable is off the sidelines, meaning he gets fired before next season?
They have a general manager in Joe Shane. Every big move has to get approval by ownership. So, look, the bottom line is they don't know who their future quarterback is past this season. Tommy DeVito's clearly not the answer. They don't have it. Drew Lock's not the answer.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions. Once again, his third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker and Joe Pisapia. This is it. Welcome in.